My name is Alara Vance, and for much of my life, I felt like a whisper in a symphony of shouts. Not literally, of course, but it captures the essence of growing up in the shadow of the illustrious Vance family. Our ancestral home, the Everglen Estate, sat nestled amidst rolling hills on the outskirts of Ethelberg, a city that prided itself on its blend of ancient stone architecture and shimmering, modern glass. The estate itself was a monument to old money and quiet prestige, but within its venerable walls, my family's dynamics often felt anything but quiet or prestigious. From my earliest memories, success was measured not by inner contentment or genuine contribution, but by outward display. My elder sister, Serafina, possessed an undeniable artistic flair, which she channeled into an exclusive design atelier that specialized in bespoke interiors for the city's elite. Her every utterance was a pronouncement, her every gesture a carefully choreographed display of effortless superiority. Then there was Caspian, my elder brother, a man whose ambition gleamed brighter than the polished surfaces of his expensive shoes. He managed a boutique financial consultancy, perpetually hinting at grand deals and influential clients, his voice a resonant boom that filled any room he entered. And finally, Lysandra, my younger sister, whose delicate beauty belied a fierce determination to acquire and flaunt the latest symbols of luxury. She ran an exclusive carriage house, a dealership that catered to Ethelberg's most discerning automobile enthusiasts. And then there was me, the quiet one, the thoughtful one, the one who preferred the solitude of the estate's sprawling gardens, observing the way light danced through ancient oak leaves, to the boisterous, competitive dinners inside. While my siblings were tutored in the art of social maneuvering and the intricacies of high finance, I gravitated towards logic puzzles, engineering schematics, and the simple satisfaction of building things with my own hands. My mother, Eleanor, a woman of formidable social grace and unwavering adherence to appearances, always encouraged my siblings' pursuits, seeing them as direct extensions of the Vance legacy. My own quiet interests, however, were often met with a gentle sigh and a dismissive wave. "Alara, darling," she'd say, her voice laced with concern that felt more like pity. "It's lovely that you find joy in such practical matters, but a young woman of our standing must aspire to more than just tinkering." The unspoken message was clear. I wasn't quite keeping up. My siblings, with their glittering careers and carefully curated social lives, seemed to soar effortlessly while I, in their eyes, remained grounded. After university, I didn't join a traditional firm or launch a glamorous venture. Instead, I immersed myself in the fascinating, often overlooked world of logistics and infrastructure. I started small, investing in obscure regional transport networks, quiet warehousing solutions, and eventually, the intricate dance of supply chains. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't the kind of work that garnered admiring nods at society galas, but it was solid, foundational, and incredibly satisfying. Over the years, my quiet endeavors grew, not through aggressive expansion or flashy acquisitions, but through meticulous planning, ethical practices, and a genuine understanding of how things connected. My network expanded, encompassing everything from critical resource distribution to the precise orchestration of private air travel. I formed Ethereum Ascent Holdings, a name chosen for its aspiration and its subtle nod to the sky, a realm that had always fascinated me with its boundless possibilities. But while my empire quietly ascended, my family remained blissfully unaware, encased in their self-made bubble of perceived grandeur. To them, I still worked a sensible desk job at a modest logistics company, a polite euphemism for what they truly believed was a perpetual state of entry-level stagnation. The annual winter solstice gathering at the Everglen Estate was always an exercise in performative jollity and thinly veiled one-upmanship. The air in the grand hall, though perfumed with the scent of pine and cinnamon from the towering tree, often felt crisp with unspoken judgments and undercurrents of competition. This year, the tree glittered with rare, antique glass ornaments, each catching the soft light like a captured star. The family, a constellation of meticulously dressed figures, moved through the room, their laughter echoing a little too loudly against the high ceilings. "Alara, darling, you've arrived." Eleanor's voice, a perfectly modulated instrument of social charm, carried across the room. She embraced me, a fleeting touch that felt more like a social obligation than genuine warmth. Her gaze, however, lingered on my simple, tailored wool dress, a silent assessment against Serafina's shimmering silk gown. "And here's your gift, Alara," Serafina announced, a slight curl to her lips that hinted at a shared secret. She held out a small, elegantly wrapped envelope, tied with a silver ribbon. "We all pitched in, knowing your sensible approach to finances." I took the envelope, my fingers brushing hers. Hers were cool, perfectly manicured. Mine, though equally cared for, bore the faint marks of someone who understood the satisfaction of a well-organized spreadsheet or the sturdy grip of a control panel. I already knew what awaited me inside. I'd overheard snippets of conversation during a chance encounter at the Verdant Sanctuary, Ethelberg's most exclusive country club, last week. They hadn't seen me, of course, tucked away in a quiet corner of the library, reviewing some recent acquisition reports for the very club they prided themselves on frequenting. The name Ethereum Ascent Holdings on the deed had clearly escaped their notice. With a practiced calm, I opened the envelope. Inside, nestled on a bed of tissue paper, was a crisp, new Ethelberg transit pass. It came complete with a meticulously folded map of tramway routes and a handwritten note from Lysandra, "For your continued journeys, Alara. Perhaps you'll discover some charming new discount boutiques along the way." "Since you still prefer the quaint charm of public transport," Caspian chimed in, jingling the keys to a sleek, custom-built electric vehicle, a model so new it was still a whispered secret among the city's elite. "Though really, Alara, at 37, shouldn't you have progressed beyond, well, a simpler pace of life?" A faint smile touched my lips. If only they knew that the simpler pace of life was a carefully chosen strategy, a quiet cover for the complex, global web of my operations. My unassuming office in the city's industrial park was a mere satellite, a quiet hub for my personal team, while the true heart of Ethereum Ascent Holdings pulsed through control centers across continents, orchestrating the very flow of commerce and, yes, the private air travel they now spoke of with such proprietary pride. "Thank you," I said, my voice soft but clear, tucking the transit pass into my simple, unbranded leather handbag, a bespoke piece, crafted by a master artisan known only to a select few. Its understated elegance costing more than Caspian's custom vehicle. They wouldn't recognize its true value, for it didn't shout its provenance. "This is truly thoughtful." "We worry about you, dear," Eleanor sighed, her hand unconsciously adjusting the multifaceted sapphire pendant that glittered at her throat. "All your siblings are so accomplished, so visible in their successes. Serafina's design atelier, Caspian's financial consultancy, and Lysandra's exclusive carriage house." Eleanor's gaze drifted to Lysandra, who was currently displaying photos of her latest acquisition, a limited-edition luxury vehicle, on her phone. Little did they know that Serafina's atelier operated from a prime location in one of my quietly acquired heritage buildings downtown. Caspian's consultancy managed a minuscule fraction of the investment portfolio generated by my logistical network's profits, funds so vast his firm would barely register them as a blip. And Lysandra's carriage house relied heavily on financing from a subsidiary of my own private banking consortium. Speaking of success, Lysandra perked up, her voice bright with excitement. "We're all flying to the Serene Peaks tonight on the most amazing private conveyance through some exclusive new aerial guild. They call themselves the Ascendant Wings Guild, and they're simply divine." She scrolled through photos on her phone, her eyes wide with admiration. "Look at the interior. It's like nothing you'll ever experience, Alara." I bit back a smile, recognizing the custom interior I'd personally designed for our flagship aerocraft, the one with my initials, EV, subtly woven into the artisanal upholstery and etched into the polished wood panels. The Ascendant Wings Guild was one of Ethereum Ascent's premier divisions, a name I'd chosen to evoke a sense of graceful elevation. "What time is your departure?" I asked innocently, checking my phone. My personal flight manager had already sent the final manifest for their particular booking. 8 bells tonight, Caspian boasted, using the old-fashioned term for 8 o'clock, clearly for dramatic effect. "Though we should head to the aerodrome early to enjoy the Celestial Lounge. Not that you'd know anything about such exclusive comforts, transit pass girl." He punctuated his remark with a booming laugh that echoed a little too loudly in the elegant hall. My phone vibrated discreetly. A message from Lyra, my head of operational command. "Miss Vance, final checks complete on Aerocraft EV1 for the Vance family journey. Shall we reveal your proprietorship during pre-flight arrangements?" "I might head out soon too," I said, rising gracefully from the velvet armchair. "Work calls, you know how it is. Sometimes even the simpler operations demand attention." "Oh, right, your flexible executive schedule," Serafina laughed, the sound dripping with patronizing amusement. "Your little desk job. Don't worry, we'll send photos from the Serene Peaks. You can live vicariously through our experiences." If they only knew, they'd be living vicariously through me in a little over an hour. Thanks again for the transit pass, I smiled, heading for the Grand Oak doors. Have a serene journey. On my way out, I sent a swift, concise message to Lyra. Let's make this enlightening. Have them wait in the main Skyport concourse first. I'll be in my private Ethereum hangar. The true solstice gift would be observing their expressions when the truth of their aspirational lifestyle gently unfurls before them. The drive to the aerodrome was surprisingly peaceful, the crisp winter air a welcome balm after the enclosed intensity of the family gathering. I had chosen a discreet, self-driving vehicle that blended seamlessly into the city's traffic, a stark contrast to the limousine my siblings would undoubtedly arrive in. This quiet journey was my transition, a mental shifting of gears from the polite facade of family life to the sharp, clear focus of my professional world. I arrived at the sprawling complex of Ethelberg's private aerodrome, a place I had quietly acquired and transformed over the last few years. It was no longer just a collection of hangars, but a meticulously designed space, a hub of efficiency and understated luxury, its architecture echoing the gentle curves of the sky. Instead of heading to the grand entrance, I navigated directly to a secluded, unmarked access point, known only to a handful of trusted personnel. Inside my private Ethereum hangar, the air was calm and quiet, a sanctuary of control. The flagship Aerocraft EV-1, a custom-designed vehicle that blended cutting-edge technology with the timeless elegance of artisanal craftsmanship, gleamed under the soft, diffused lights. Its sleek lines promised swift, silent passage through the sky. I moved to my private lounge, a space of hushed opulence designed for contemplation and strategic thought. A wall-mounted display, discreetly integrated into the polished wood paneling, showed a live feed from the aerodrome's various security cameras. Lyra's calm voice, transmitted through a secure earpiece, was a soothing presence. Miss Vance, they've just arrived at the main Skyport concourse. They are, as anticipated, expressing their displeasure with the general waiting area. I watched them on the screen, Serafina, pacing in her impossibly high, custom-made velvet boots, her designer cape swishing dramatically with each turn. Caspian, hands on hips, attempting to lecture a young, impeccably uniformed staff member who, I knew, held multiple advanced degrees in aeronautical engineering and was one of my most brilliant flight strategists, about the perceived inefficiencies of private aviation logistics. And Lysandra, ever the visual curator, taking endless selfies in front of the sweeping concourse windows, occasionally attempting to capture the distant gleam of private aircraft through the glass. They are demanding to see the proprietor, Lyra's voice continued, a hint of suppressed amusement in her tone. Apparently, the main concourse's celestial lounge, which is indeed quite magnificent, isn't sufficiently exclusive for the Vance family's immediate pre-flight rituals. A faint smile touched my lips. Let them wait 10 more minutes, Lyra. Let the anticipation build. Then, escort them directly to Ethereum Hangar 1. I adjusted the cuffs of my bespoke, deep emerald suit, chosen for its quiet authority rather than its overt flash. It was tailored to perfection, a garment that flowed with my movements, a testament to subtle power. The security feed showed Serafina's voice, amplified by Lyra's discreet audio feed, carrying through the concourse. Do you know who we are? The Vances are one of Ethelberg's most distinguished families. Our time is precious. Of course, madam, Lyra replied, her voice smooth and professional, completely unruffled. The proprietor is well aware of your esteemed standing. Eleanor, ever the diplomat, stepped forward, her perfectly coiffed silver hair framing a face etched with a practiced blend of concern and social expectation. Perhaps we could speak with someone of greater seniority. We are personal acquaintances with many proprietors of these grand flying vessels. The proprietor will be meeting you shortly, Lyra assured them. In fact, we are now authorized to escort you directly to the private Ethereum hangar. Please follow me. The camera followed their procession across the tarmac, a slow, deliberate walk that allowed them ample opportunity to preen and pose. They assumed this special treatment was a direct result of their perceived importance, a bowing to their status, rather than my explicit instructions. This is more like it, Caspian declared, straightening his designer tie, his chest puffing out. One expects a certain level of discretion when one travels this way. Though I don't recall hearing about an Ethereum Ascent Holdings before, Lysandra squinted at the subtle, elegant branding on the hangar's facade. Wasn't that something Alara mentioned once, when she was trying to explain her quaint little desk job? Her tone was dismissive, almost pitying. Please, Serafina scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. Alara can barely afford the tram fare. She's probably organizing stationery in some dusty basement office of a minor logistics firm. As if on cue, the massive hangar doors, crafted from polished steel and reinforced glass, began to glide open slowly, revealing the magnificent aerocraft EV-1 within. Its custom-designed fuselage, gleaming under the hangar lights, bore the distinctive logo of Ethereum Ascent Holdings and, subtly incorporated into its tail design, my own initials, EV. The flight plan for the Serene Peaks was already programmed, displayed on a sleek panel near the boarding ramp. "Welcome to Ethereum Ascent Holdings," Lyra announced, her voice resonating gently in the vast space as she led them inside. "The proprietor will see you in the private lounge." They walked into my executive lounge, still utterly oblivious to the quiet unfolding of truth. The space exuded a profound sense of calm wealth, the kind of luxury that whispered its presence rather than shouting it, completely lost on their outward-focused sensibilities. The furnishings were chosen for comfort and quiet beauty, the art for its emotional resonance rather than its market value. The proprietor must be some elusive tech visionary, Lysandra mused, snapping photos with her phone, her flash momentarily reflecting off a polished bronze sculpture. Alara would simply expire if she could see this level of sophistication. I pressed the button concealed in the armrest of my armchair, which actuated the hidden door connecting my private office to the lounge. The section of the wall, seamlessly integrated into the design, glided open silently, revealing me. "Actually," I said, stepping into the softly lit lounge, my voice calm and clear, "Alara can see it quite well from here." The silence that followed was absolute, heavy with the weight of revelation. Serafina's jaw dropped, her perfectly coiffed hair seeming to freeze in midair. Caspian's eyes, usually so confident, widened in genuine disbelief, his face draining of color. Lysandra's phone clattered to the polished floor, forgotten, her mouth agape. Eleanor, typically unflappable, clutched her pearl necklace, her eyes fixed on me with a mixture of shock and dawning horror. Their faces, frozen in that moment of stark recognition, were better than any elaborate solstice gift they could ever have given me. It wasn't a moment of triumph for me, not in the way one might typically envision. There was no gleeful satisfaction, no desire for revenge. Instead, it was a profound and quiet ache, a bittersweet confirmation of the chasm that had always existed between us. They saw a manifestation of wealth and power, but I saw the raw, exposed fragility of their own self-worth, built on a foundation of borrowed light. "Alara," Serafina managed to stammer, her voice barely a whisper, as if speaking my name would somehow make the impossible real. What is the meaning of this?" "It means," I said gently, stepping fully into the lounge, my gaze sweeping over each of them, "that sometimes the quiet work creates the loudest truths." I gestured towards the aerocraft, its interior lights softly illuminating the subtle EV woven into the fabric of the seats. "Welcome aboard your flight to the Serene Peaks. Or perhaps, to a quiet moment of reflection." The transformation of my family's demeanor over the following weeks was nothing short of spectacular, though it was a slow, sometimes painful unraveling rather than an immediate change. Every time they attempted to reassert their imagined superiority, the quiet reality I had built gently, but firmly, brought them back to ground. It was never about gloating for me, but about establishing truth, a fundamental boundary they had consistently ignored. Serafina was the first to attempt to reclaim some semblance of her former poise, though the edge of entitlement in her voice had dulled. She arrived unannounced at my corporate offices, which were housed in the Harmonious Heights, one of Ethelberg's most elegant, yet understated, glass and steel towers. My personal assistant, a kind and discerning woman named Anya, had alerted me to her arrival. Serafina stood in the reception area, clutching her designer bag like a shield, her usual theatricality muted by an air of forced pleasantness. "Alara, darling," she purred, entering my office after a polite knock, her eyes scanning the tastefully minimalist space as if searching for a hidden camera. "About my design atelier's lease here in your lovely building." I looked up from my tablet, which displayed her company's rather dismal financial reports, showing 3 consecutive months of overdue payments. "The one where the quarterly rent payment has been outstanding for nearly 90 days, I interrupted, my voice calm, devoid of accusation. "It is rather interesting how you managed to acquire that new, rather striking emerald pendant, yet the atelier's ledgers show no capacity for rent." Her carefully constructed composure faltered. "I can explain, Alara." There have been some unexpected delays with client payments. Her gaze darted around, seeking an escape route. No need, I said, finally meeting her eyes, my expression gentle but firm. I understand. Sometimes, the pursuit of outward splendor can eclipse the demands of foundational integrity. However, business is business, Serafina. Your new studio space is ready in the building's lower level, adjacent to the archives and maintenance wing. The rent there is considerably more reflective of your atelier's current operational capacity. It's a charming space, quite practical for focused work. My words were not a punishment, but a simple statement of fact, an offering of a more sustainable path. It was an opportunity for her to build from a place of reality, not pretense. Caspian, ever the strategist, attempted damage control through what he perceived as legitimate business channels. He sought to leverage his financial consultancy's reputation, despite its now known fragility. He invited me to a forced lunch meeting at one of Ethelberg's most exclusive eateries, the Gilded Spoon, not realizing that Ethereum Ascent Holdings held a significant, quiet stake in the restaurant's parent company. Ilara, my dear sister, he began, attempting his usual blend of charm and condescension, we must discuss synergies. My firm possesses unparalleled expertise in managing high-value portfolios. We could manage your holdings, optimize your aviation empire's vast funds, just as you've so effectively managed your clients' assets. He leaned back, an air of expectant confidence around him, as if offering me a grand favor. I simply slid my tablet across the table, displaying a comprehensive audit report of his firm, compiled by my banking division's internal oversight team. These hidden fees, Caspian, I remarked, my voice quiet, almost reflective. The layers of undisclosed charges, the creative reclassification of client funds. They are, shall we say, quite imaginative. The regulators of market integrity might find them particularly illuminating. His face paled, the carefully cultivated tan seeming to recede. His appetite, usually robust, vanished. He left lunch early, mumbling about an urgent call, the silence he left behind filled with the quiet clink of silver against porcelain. The conversation was not about winning, but about gently, definitively, laying bare the truth of his operations. Lysandra's turn came next. She approached me during a family dinner, a somber affair compared to our previous gatherings at Eleanor's opulent townhouse. The sparkle in her eyes had diminished, replaced by a flicker of anxiety. About the financing consortium that underpins our carriage house's sales, she began, picking at her salad. The one that allows us such flexibility with our clients is now requiring full, transparent documentation and a rigorous, comprehensive credit assessment for every potential acquisition. I finished for her, my voice even. No more special arrangements, no more creative solutions for your social circle. Every transaction will now stand on its own merit. Her fork clattered to her plate. The era of inflated sales figures and questionable credit, which had allowed her to flaunt her success, was quietly, irrevocably, coming to an end. It was about respect for the process, respect for true value, and respect for self. My mother, Eleanor, ever the social strategist, tried a different approach. She orchestrated a carefully curated reconciliation dinner at the Verdant Sanctuary, believing she could, through her renowned social alchemy, somehow smooth over the growing cracks in the family's facade. She was unaware, of course, that I had recently acquired the club through one of my holding companies, drawn by its historic charm and potential for revitalization. We need to present a united front, darlings, she insisted, her voice resonating with an almost desperate plea for normalcy. Our family's image, our standing in Ethelberg society, it is everything. Is it, mother? I asked, my gaze meeting hers across the polished mahogany table. My voice held a gentle sadness, a quiet challenge. Is image truly everything? More than genuine connection? More than the integrity of our actions? I signaled discreetly to the maitre d', a man who had worked for the club for decades and whom I had retained, recognizing his quiet dignity. He appeared by my side, an air of quiet professionalism about him, carrying a tray bearing 5 elegantly sealed envelopes. For my family, and one larger, for Eleanor. The new proprietor, I explained, my voice carrying clearly through the hushed dining room, is very particular about ensuring that membership in the Verdant Sanctuary reflects genuine contribution and ethical conduct. There is a renewed emphasis on authenticity, on members who truly embody the values of community and integrity, rather than merely claiming prosperity based on borrowed or, perhaps, misrepresented means. My siblings and mother each opened their envelopes. Inside were notices of the immediate, though politely worded, revocation of their verdant sanctuary memberships. Their expressions shifted from confusion to disbelief, then to open indignation. The silence that descended over dessert was, for me, more satisfying than any celebratory feast. It was the silence of truth unadorned. But the true turning point, the one that forced them to confront the full scope of their self-deception, came when their private banking details were due for annual review. My banking subsidiary, now encompassing a wide network of financial institutions they had unknowingly utilized, issued routine letters to each of them, requesting comprehensive verification of their assets and liabilities. The meticulous scrutiny, a standard practice for my firm, was entirely unprecedented for them. This is harassment. Serafina had exploded during an emergency family meeting they called, not to discuss their future, but to strategize about their Alara situation. The meeting took place in the ornate drawing room of Eleanor's townhouse, a room that now felt stifling with unspoken tension. No, I corrected her gently, my voice firm but without harshness. This is due diligence. This is the careful stewardship of resources. Something, perhaps, you should have considered before leveraging yourselves so extensively to maintain outward appearances. I laid out their options not as a punishment, but as a path. They could either accept their new reality, choosing to live within their actual means and work for their success, rather than merely pretending to it, or face the public consequences of their years of financial manipulations, which would inevitably come to light through the bank's rigorous, new audits. You can't do this. Caspian protested, his voice cracking with a raw blend of anger and fear. We're family. There are bonds, traditions, a certain expectation of loyalty. Family? I raised an eyebrow, a quiet challenge in my gaze. Like when you consistently excluded me from family photographs, suggesting my career choices were not quite up to standard, or when you whispered thinly veiled rumors about my perceived financial struggles at various charity functions? I stood, smoothing the gentle fabric of my bespoke suit, a gesture of quiet resolve. You have until the end of the month to decide. Your options are clear. Either way, the privileges of the Ascendant Wings Guild, your exclusive aerial conveyances, are, of course, revoked. I hear the Ethelberg transit service to the aerodrome is quite reliable, especially the new Rapidlink tram. As I left them sitting amidst the borrowed luxury of Eleanor's drawing room, surrounded by the trappings of wealth they'd never truly earned, I pulled out the original Ethelberg transit pass they'd given me at the solstice gathering. I had had it framed. It now hung in a quiet, sunlit corner of my private Ethereum hangar, a silent reminder that true success doesn't need to show off. It simply needs to show up, with integrity and quiet strength, at the right moment. And sometimes that moment comes with a first-class lesson in humility, delivered not from 40,000 feet, but from a grounded place of truth. The quiet reverberations of my family's financial reality check continued to unfold precisely as I had anticipated, though the initial shock slowly gave way to a grudging acceptance, then to something more akin to a painful, hesitant understanding. It wasn't a triumphant victory for me, but a necessary severing of the chains of pretense that had bound us. Within days, the meticulously constructed facade of their success began to visibly crumble. Serafina's design atelier clients, alerted by the now public news of her financial instability and her repeated lease defaults, began canceling contracts with polite but firm regrets. The glittering illusion she had maintained for years could no longer hold. Caspian's boutique financial consultancy faced a rapid exodus of its remaining wealthy clients after whispers about his creative accounting practices reached the ears of Ethelberg's financial elite. Lysandra's exclusive carriage house struggled immensely as my banking subsidiaries knew. Stringent financing requirements revealed just how many of her elite sales had been based on questionable credit arrangements and inflated valuations. The ripple effect was undeniable. Eleanor, my mother, ever the social navigator, made one final, desperate attempt at damage control. She hosted a grand charity gala, the Ethelberg Legacy Ball, believing she could use her formidable social influence to mend their tarnished image. Unbeknownst to her, Ethereum Ascent Holdings had quietly become the primary benefactor of the very charity she championed, a major endowment ensuring its long-term viability. Ladies, gentlemen, she announced, her voice resonating with her usual blend of grace and authority, addressing her carefully curated social circle gathered in the grand ballroom of the Ethelberg Town Hall. My daughter, Alara, has been so immensely blessed by our family's constant guidance and unwavering support. We always knew she possessed a certain, shall we say, understated potential. She gestured towards me, expecting a polite acknowledgement of a minor contributor. Actually, Mrs. Vance, the charity's director, a woman of quiet dignity and sharp intellect, gently interrupted, stepping forward with a deferential bow in my direction. We were hoping to speak with your daughter directly, regarding her recent, truly transformative endowment of 100 million Oreos. She is, in fact, being honored tonight as our primary patron and the recipient of the Beacon of Ethelberg Award. The look on my mother's face as I calmly took the stage, introduced as one of Ethelberg's most influential and visionary business leaders, was a complex blend of shock, confusion, and a dawning, unavoidable realization. It was a quieter, deeper impact than any condescending gift they had ever given me. It was the moment her carefully constructed narrative, the one where I was the quiet, struggling one, finally disintegrated. But the true, pivotal shift came during the emergency family meeting they called themselves, a week later. It was held not at Eleanor's townhouse, but at the Silent Hearth, a new, discreetly elegant restaurant I had quietly acquired and transformed, its minimalist design and emphasis on local, honest cuisine a reflection of my own values. They had chosen it for its reputation for privacy, never bothering to investigate its ownership. "We need to discuss our family's future," Eleanor began, attempting to maintain her composure as the maitre d', a tall, serene man who knew my every preference, led us to the owner's private dining salon. Her voice, usually so clear and commanding, held an unusual tremor. "You mean your financial future, Mother," I corrected her gently, nodding to Anya, who had discreetly placed 5 slim, leather-bound folders at each of their places. "These contain your current net worth statements. They are the real numbers, not the ones you've been presenting to society or, indeed, to yourselves." Serafina's hands, usually so steady when sketching design plans, trembled as she opened her folder. Her eyes, wide with disbelief, scanned the figures. "This can't be right. My atelier has been operating at a catastrophic loss for 3 years. "Indeed," I confirmed, my voice soft, almost sympathetic. "Those luxury client payments you so readily bragged about? Most were, in fact, structured as substantial loans you took out, using inflated project estimates as collateral. The facade was costly, Serafina." Caspian barely looked at his own numbers, his gaze fixed on some distant, unseen point. "You already knew the investment losses were hidden under layers of shell companies and creative accounting, didn't you?" His voice was hollow. I nodded. "Until my banking division's audit team found them." With thoroughness and without prejudice. Lysandra, who had been dabbing at her eyes with a delicate lace handkerchief, stared at her papers, mascara starting to run freely down her cheeks. "The carriage house is worth barely a tenth of what we've been claiming at charity auctions and social gatherings," she choked out. I confirmed it, I said, my voice unwavering. "Those creative financing deals, which allowed you to move such high volumes of luxury vehicles, are now coming due. The true value, Lysandra, often lies not in the perceived, but in the actual." Eleanor, ever practical, set her folder aside with a sigh that seemed to carry the weight of decades of carefully maintained illusions. She met my gaze, her eyes surprisingly clear. "What do you want, Alara? Money? Position? Recognition? You have it all." "I want what I have already achieved," I replied, my voice steady, imbued with the quiet strength I had cultivated over years. "Success based on actual, honest work, on genuine contribution, not on appearances or superficial validation. The question, Mother, is what are you willing to do to save yourselves from your own facades? What kind of family, what kind of life do you truly desire?" I pulled out another set of folders, slightly thicker, their potential salvation laid out within. "Each of you has 2 pathways presented before you. 1. Accept genuine, structured positions within the various divisions of Ethereum Ascent Holdings, starting at entry level, with salaries based on actual, measurable performance and a commitment to learning the true value of work. Or 2. Face the inevitable public consequences of your financial manipulations and the unraveling of your unsustainable enterprises. The choice is yours to make, freely and without external coercion, for your own growth and integrity." Entry level. Serafina looked horrified, her earlier tears forgotten in a flash of indignation. "After all I've built? My reputation." "Like an assistant," I corrected her, my voice gentle but firm. "Like where I, too, began, in various capacities, learning the foundational elements of business from the ground up, not from the exclusive confines of the verdant sanctuary down. It is an opportunity to truly build, Serafina, not merely to present." "This is ridiculous, Alara." Caspian protested, his voice a strained whisper, though he usually boomed. "We have established reputations. A certain standing. You have illusions, Caspian." I cut him off, my voice calm, almost sympathetic. "And those illusions are about to cost you everything, unless you are willing to embrace reality and begin the challenging, yet ultimately liberating, path of genuine self-reconstruction." My phone vibrated discreetly in my pocket. It was a notification confirming that their Ascendant Wings Guild private aerocraft memberships had been officially and irrevocably revoked. The very vessels they had once mocked me for not being able to afford were now permanently out of their reach. "You have 24 hours to decide," I concluded, rising from the table, leaving them with their truth laid bare in black and white. "Oh, and one more thing." I reached into my bag and pulled out the original Ethelberg transit pass they had given me at the solstice gathering. I placed it gently on the table, where the fine china reflected its humble surface. "You might want to familiarize yourselves with the city's public transportation system. Either way, your luxury vehicle leases, underwritten by my banking subsidiary, conclude at the end of next week." The silence I left behind tasted sweeter than any vintage champagne they had ever flaunted. It was the silence of hard-won peace, of boundaries finally established, and of the quiet, hopeful potential for a new kind of family connection, forged not in pretense, but in the challenging crucible of truth. The subsequent months became a period of unexpected transformation, both for my family and for the sprawling landscape of Ethereum Ascent Holdings. The decisions were difficult for them, undeniably. The pride, the carefully constructed self-images, all had to be dismantled, piece by painful piece. But what emerged from the rubble was, to my quiet relief, something far more authentic. Serafina was the first to fully capitulate, though not without a lingering whisper of her former theatricality. She arrived at my office precisely at 7 o'clock in the morning, 2 days after the meeting, her designer attire replaced by a sensible, impeccably tailored suit in a muted gray. Her shoulders, usually held so high, carried a slight, uncharacteristic slump. "I'll take the entry-level position," she said quietly, her voice devoid of its usual condescension, replaced by a note approaching genuine humility. "The last of the atelier's clients officially canceled yesterday. There's nothing left to save there." I assigned her to our aviation interior design team, not as a leader, but as an assistant. Her initial tasks were foundational: organizing fabric swatches, creating meticulous digital catalogs of materials, and researching sustainable design alternatives, the very basic, unglamorous work she had previously delegated to underpaid interns. I watched her not with satisfaction, but with a quiet sense of hope. Her initial frustration slowly gave way to a meticulousness I hadn't known she possessed, a genuine interest in the textures and forms, detached from their monetary value. Caspian held out longer, his pride a formidable fortress. But the public auditing of his investment firm statements, which inevitably followed, became a glaring indictment. He arrived at my office a week later, looking noticeably less polished, the gleam in his eyes diminished, and his precious, antique timepiece conspicuously absent from his wrist. He looked, for the first time, truly tired. The Regulators of Market Integrity interview was exceptionally enlightening, Alara, he admitted, slumping into a chair in my office, his usual booming voice a mere rasp. "About that junior analyst position, in your compliance department?" He began his new role in our regulatory compliance division, learning the intricate, stringent regulations he had spent years so creatively avoiding. His new supervisor was one of the analysts he had previously dismissed as merely support staff during his days of corporate swagger. I observed him in meetings, quiet for once, diligently taking notes, asking questions born of genuine curiosity rather than an attempt to assert dominance. It was a slow, arduous process for him, but a necessary one, teaching him the invaluable lesson of integrity from the ground up. Lyssandra's surrender came after the full extent of the carriage house's financing crisis hit the business news, its once glamorous facade now publicly shattered. She arrived not in a luxury vehicle, but in a modest, well-maintained used electric runabout, a stark contrast to her previous fleet of gleaming machines. "The transit pass," she said, her voice soft, almost fragile, as she placed it gently on my desk. It was the original, still crisp, still pristine. I kept it. As a reminder. "Can I still? Is there still a position available, Alara?" Her eyes, usually so bright with the allure of luxury, held a vulnerability I had never seen before. I assigned her to vehicle fleet management for our ground transportation division, a part of Ethereum Ascent Holdings that handled everything from corporate shuttles to logistical support vehicles. Here, she began to learn the actual mechanics of automotive operations, the nuances of maintenance, efficiency, and resource allocation, rather than just the glamorous sales pitch and the superficial sheen of ownership. She discovered a quiet aptitude for logistics, a satisfaction in ensuring things ran smoothly, divorced from the need to impress. My mother, Eleanor, her transformation perhaps the most profound and surprising, chose a different path entirely. Instead of accepting a position within the company, she made a series of quiet, deliberate changes to her life. She sold most of her extravagant designer wardrobe, retaining only a few timeless, elegant pieces. She downsized from the sprawling, high-maintenance townhouse to a modest, charming condo in a quieter part of Ethelberg, a place she selected for its abundant natural light and the small, vibrant community garden it overlooked. "I've spent decades, Alara, meticulously managing appearances," she told me one crisp autumn afternoon as we sat over herbal tea in my private Ethereum hangar. The vast space, once a symbol of my hidden power, now felt simply like a quiet, contemplative sanctuary. The framed transit pass hung on the wall behind us, a silent testament to our journey. "Perhaps," she continued, her gaze steady, remarkably free of its usual societal performativity, "it's time I learned to manage reality instead. To truly live within it, and to find value not in what others see, but in what truly is." Her words hung in the air, gentle yet profound. I knew, with a quiet certainty, that while the family dynamics were irrevocably changed, and the old pretense shattered, something new, fragile but real, had begun to grow. It wasn't a complete reconciliation in the traditional sense, perhaps it never could be, not in the way one might mend a broken vase. But it was a beginning of honest connection, of self-respect earned through humility, and of boundaries finally honored. My journey had been about finding my own worth, and in doing so, I had, perhaps, gently nudged them towards finding theirs. The path ahead was open, filled with the quiet promise of growth for all of us. And for the first time in a long time, the symphony felt less like shouts and more like a harmonious, evolving melody.